Ethelburga has had a long-standing interest in the different uses of traditional and personal story in community building. For the last couple of years, we've been funded by the Sir Halley Stewart Trust to run a project in Brent and in Tower Hamlets, building interreligious relationships using story. And we've had a great partnership with the London Interfaith Centre, which we've very much valued. And we've done lots of events in the local area in Brent using story to bring people together. In June this year, we had a conference called Stories That Heal, Stories That Harm, working with the Forgiveness Project and with the International School of Storytelling, held at the London Interfaith Centre.
Okay, well, here at the London Interfaith Centre, we have a partnership with St Ethelburga, so we've done a lot of storytelling events. The idea for us being that people talk about their faith, the meaning they have in life, more easily through story than through theology or abstract reasoning. So I want to encourage storytelling here as much as possible. And on the storytelling day, there were people of many faiths present, and they were working with people of many faiths, helping them to find meaning in life through storytelling. I think Brent is possibly the most diverse borough in London as far as faiths are concerned, and here in Brondesbury we have a Sunni school next door, a Shia mosque across the road, we have the Hindus in Willesden Lane, and we have some Buddhists in Willesden Lane, Jews at the end of Brondesbury Road, Brahma Kumaris around the corner, and we have lots of contacts with Baha'i and Zoroastrians and Buddhists as well.
Do they come to your place here?
Yes, we run an interfaith programme, getting people of different faiths to meet each other.
In interfaith work, people can come together, and this is what I've seen, people who in other circumstances might be debating or possibly even arguing, having conflicting points of views and positions. And in interfaith storytelling, people come together with no agenda except to share stories and to hear the other person's take on life, their experience of their religion, not just the religion as it's written, but between the lines, the lived experience, because people are telling the stories from their tradition and from their faith. And that's what I like best about interfaith storytelling, is that you learn about the other person's point of view, their experience of life, how they taste life, the flavour of the religion, but there's no need for any kind of debate about who's right and who's wrong, but just to share those stories together. And I think what's particularly interesting about interfaith storytelling with other monotheistic faiths, I work as well with Jews and Christians, is that you can even take the same texts in terms of the Old Testament that's shared between all three faiths and have sometimes a similar telling of it and sometimes a really different one that gives a different aspect and a different dimension to your worship. And you leave feeling that they've taken in something about difference, and I think that's been the nicest thing. It's not that they've, even if a lot of the children aren't Muslims, and not even that they might have taken in information in terms of passing an exam, but that they've taken in something about people of different faiths sitting side by side, respecting each other, sharing stories, making them laugh, telling them a touching story, an interesting story, and that they've taken that sense of togetherness away with them.
While you tell stories, people are able to recognize that there are certain central truths which exist in different faiths. And so although you may be listening to a story from a Muslim storyteller or from a Jewish storyteller or Baha'i storyteller, some of the noble aspects of human behavior and some of the noble things that we all strive for, you find that there are similarities in all faiths. And so as people who may not be familiar with particular faiths come to listen in the audience, they are able to recognize that there is more that unites us than there is that divides us. You are actually revealing truths which are universal, because stories are universal. So it's not unusual for people from the audience to to come up to you and ask questions about things that you may have said in your storytelling. And it makes them realize that all faiths should be equally respected.
The idea behind this event that we put on, which was called Stories That Heal, Stories That Harm, was really to explore what other people were doing in this area around biographical storytelling. We were saying, well, let's look at who else is working in this field of biographical storytelling that is using real, true stories. And let's see what other people are doing and the problems and the risks that they come up with. And let's see if we can learn from it. And that is how the event really got underway, because we knew that there was a lot of interesting work happening out there and we wanted to bring people together. I've always known the importance and the true impact of telling the real story. So when I started the Forgiveness Project, I wanted to use people's own experience, people's own testimonies, in order to explore issues around reconciliation and forgiveness. And I often worry about the impact of retelling the story of trauma, even though all the stories have an aspect of hope, because these people that we use in our project have always reconciled with the trauma within them.
Just have a kind of visual representation of who's in the room and what people's interests are. Who's interested in story and narrative in relation to conflict specifically? Oh, that's almost everyone's room. Okay, who's interested in story from a healing or therapy point of view? This conference has really been guided by the question, what's most alive in narrative work and storytelling today? So what are the kind of cutting edge questions?
Some of the most difficult stories I work with are ones that can't really, people feel they can't even speak them to their closest family members. But also stories to do with conflict, international conflict or prejudice. And I try to work with how can you tell a story to, could be thousands of people, in a way that you can minimise the harm that you might do and increase the possibility for understanding and healing to take place. And I've found over the years that the people often come and work with me and want to know how they can do this, and they think it's something to do with a technique or a skill that they can learn from me. But actually, the secret is it's not. It's actually to do with the individual and their consciousness and their awareness of what they're talking about. One of the most common questions, actually, is how to be able to say the things that seem unspeakable. And I find that by working with them in an artistic way, the artistic training, if you like, of doing that frees people to make choices about how they present their life story, and it's very, very freeing.
You said that the healing comes not through a skill, but through a change in awareness in the individual. Can you encapsulate what that change in awareness is?
I think definitely the first level would be freeing yourself from the story, freeing yourself from your own story so that you can actually see, or I can see, obviously as a performer who actually tells my own stories as well, that I can see that this story is just part of humanity. It's not attached to me. It's not my own story in that very small way, but becomes part of what it is for all of us to be human, that all of us have experienced the same things. If I have experienced loss or bereavement, for example, I know that you have too, and that I'm speaking to that part of you that has experienced that.
I'm going to tell you a wee story. What happened was this ex-soldier actually said to me and to us in a small group, not on the first day of course, that he had served in Craigan, in this estate. It's like a big council estate, where I live, where I still live. And so what happened there for you, and what happened there for him is his friend was shot dead.
The point of this work is to bring people together to collectively bear witness, often to bear witness to stories that are beyond our ability to bear. And they hear from the audience, oh my God, you changed my life. Your story was my story. That which was the poison or the trauma now has a way of being a healing.
The interest in narrative mediation came from a couple of places. One was a dissatisfaction with some of the traditional models of mediation that locate conflict and responses to conflict purely inside the individual. The response is usually framed in terms of hearing people's feelings and interpreting and responding to and finding common ground within the shared needs of the individuals. And so narrative mediation, which the workshop later will be a bit of an introduction to, privileges the cultural aspects, the social aspects of conflict, and examines critically the relationship between narratives and identity.
This month, Black history is living in me. My pasty complexion part of the twisted legacy. Yeah, it's complicated. Like all the problems that were caused when slavery ended. And I never pretended that I understand and that I don't get offended. When man who have mind that I mix up. Tell black people still struggling, ain't it time just they fix up? So I picks up my mic like Martin in DC, or Malcolm X, who's next to see me. Protest that no test can slow my flow or make me rest. You see, I'm blessed like a Rasta when his arm crosses his chest. And you can't test my Northwest slang. Shaped by a man from Caribbean island, and still I slam for my brothers Islamic. First push this wind, rush, I speak deep like Titanic, the soul of Motown, I am it, God damn it. Still.
Professor Papadopoulos, Director of the Centre for Trauma, Asylum and Refugees at the University of Essex, spoke in fascinating detail about the concept of storied communities. This refers to the way communities deal with the experience of adversity by constructing narratives which give shared meaning to difficult events. These responses can be negative, focusing on victimhood and injury, or neutral, which make communities more resilient to future adversity, or positive, through which new positive qualities emerge. He called this adversity-activated development. Contrasting negative and positive narratives in storied communities, he mentioned how stories of adversity could not only be about pain, but about strength in overcoming adversity. Stories of generosity could be told, as well as stories of loss. He said research showed that people with coherent stories about trauma display less pathology than others, regardless of the severity of the trauma. Adversity-activated development is the key goal of narrative work with people dealing with the trauma of adversity.
الصلاة والسلام عليك يا
Well, I'm really here as a storyteller, and I'm just really hoping for inspiration to network, to come up with new storytelling devices, to come up with ideas.
I knew it was going to be very interesting. I didn't know that I'd be quite as drawn right in almost immediately, and I thought all the speakers were fantastic, and it's very difficult to know which group to choose. I thought it was a really wonderful quality in the room.
I've made new friends and I've learned so much as well.
Yes, it's been really mind-blowing. Very timely, brilliant stuff. I think the audience and the panel members were fantastic.
What is your background?
So the work I'm doing at the moment with churches, looking at those who have been abused in churches, how churches respond, how we work with the complex issues.
Was it useful what you heard so far for your work as well?
Massively timely, because we're engaged in a conversation about how we create the processes and develop processes for restoration and transformation. So brilliant.
And we did come up with a lot more learning. I think what we really discovered was that it's a hugely complex area, that there's a lot of very interesting work going on, and that there's need, certainly in all the dialogues that were had on that day, there was the need to carry on and go deeper, because we actually, one day, we skimmed the surface.
عليك يا سيدي عليك يا سيد الأولين والآخرين